Hello, I'm Dr. Heather Holleman, an associate teaching professor at the Pennsylvania State University, and I teach advanced writing and professional development for the Schreier Honor students there. And I'm thrilled for you to join me for this first short lesson on all the ways you can immediately improve your academic writing and create an irresistible and authentic written voice. So we'll get started. The goals of improving your writing are really to do two things. The first is just to capture attention. If you think about all the boring kinds of academic writing, one of the things I teach is how to develop a written voice that really captures attention so your writing becomes irresistible. The second thing I want you to know is you can actually build authentic connection with your readers when they feel like there's an authentic written voice there. So you always want to think, can I capture attention and am I building connection? So the tools you have available, this first lesson is just going to be about punctuation. And our next lesson will be about the verbs you use and kind of some techniques to help with your sentence variation and some of the things you can do to continue to capture attention. So when you think about punctuation, I know this sounds really boring. A lot of you are thinking, oh, I know grammar, I know how to do this, but there's actually ways that you can use advanced grammar for a powerful rhetorical effect. Now, the punctuation marks, if you need like a quick grammar review, I'm talking about how to strategically use colons, semicolons, dashes, parentheses, and commas in academic writing. They direct the eye and they help build an authentic written voice. So for example, if you think about the punctuation marks, there's really a psychology behind them. So to start with the colon, it's very bossy, it's authoritative, it's a very direct and clear punctuation mark. It'll help you sound confident. It's a very teacherly kind of tone when you use a colon. So an example I would give, if a student or a professor is writing a sentence like this and they're describing their project, they might say, this project answers two questions related to our academic identity, and it specifically answers how we understand our purpose and how we build confidence. That's a fine sentence, but look at the difference when you really direct the eye. It makes it concise and authoritative to say, this project explores two key factors related to academic identity, colon, purpose and confidence. Notice how it directs the eye, notice how it builds confidence. So just remember the colon, it's confident and it's concise. Now, in your own academic writing, I recommend using the colon also to create clarity. So for the project you're working on right now, you could say this project answers two key questions, colon. It'll help you, it'll help your readers. It's also really good in your professional materials to think of this sentence. I bring two key skills to this position, colon. Or just define what problem you're answering, but phrase it like this, the main problem, colon. Also remember the colon replaces words such as includes or such as, so you want the colon to always follow that noun. The second punctuation mark is what I call the misunderstood semicolon. It's a way to connect two sentences to show a relationship between those sentences, and it helps you, sound smart, winsome, it's peaceful. It's a very subtle punctuation mark. So here's an example that a student may write something like this. I walked into the musty office holding two copies of my dissertation and the largest coffee I could order. Now look at the difference with the semicolon. I walked into the musty office with the essentials, semicolon. You're making an argument. What are they? I balanced two copies of my dissertation and the largest coffee I could order. I know it seems really simple, but you can compare the tone. If you look at the three sentences that I've listed here, one uses just the straight, punctuation mark of the period. One offers that semicolon, but think about what you would do if you added the colon in. So you have this kind of winsome idea, but then you also have sort of the confident, the direct, the clear and concise colon. So the semicolon trick is it usually replaces the word because, and it also provides an example of what you're talking about. So for example, if you say, I didn't attend the faculty meeting, semicolon, I went to the grocery store instead. You're providing an explanation of the phrase that came before it. So remember, use the colon to sound confident, use the semicolon to slow down the pace, to make a subtle argument. You're also creating some sentence variation there. Now the dashes really direct the eye. They're like a shout. And they're really kind of misunderstood. Of course, there's the M dash, the N dash, and the hyphen. We're talking about the M dash here, which is the longer dash. Now, they really do create like a shout. They're able to help you sound enthusiastic, and you're able to direct the eye and quicken the pace. It's less than the colon, but maybe more than the semicolon, which is exciting. So here's an example comparing kind of all three, just using that one sentence. You know, you could say, I walked into the musty office holding 2 copies of my dissertation and the largest coffee I could order. That's your base sentence, but look at with the dash. I walked into the musty office carrying 2 copies of my dissertation and the largest coffee I could order to prepare myself for what would come. It directs the eye and it creates that shout of what you think is important in that sentence. So remember, what goes inside the dashes is something that you might set off with commas, or it's something that you could maybe put in italics or bold, or that you would want to have an exclamation point for, but instead you're using the dashes to really emphasize something. So a sentence might be, you know, she turned away from me without even listening to my explanation and walked out the door. So far you've got some good techniques to create that authentic voice. Finally, you've got like the whispering parentheses before we get to that last thing, the comma. Now the parentheses is a moment of intimacy with the reader, and it really bolsters that sense of vulnerability and authenticity. So it's the idea you're telling a secret. So look at that sentence. You know, I walked into the musty office, but what if you said, I walked into the musty office holding 2 copies of my dissertation and the largest coffee I could order. It's just like a whisper. It's just this like, I'm telling you a secret. And in academic writing, that does create a moment of vulnerability. I don't recommend using them a lot, but they do create this kind of secret. So when I was writing a book that became a bestseller, I really needed to create a sense of like connection with the reader. And so I decided to share a little secret in a sentence. So I said, I decided to get married and have children 5 years earlier than our plan. That's an example of, okay, I'm telling you a little secret about myself. You don't use them all the time, but you can use them to announce a vulnerable moment and to create some intimacy. So finally, I want to end with this idea of you using the comma strategically. Now, a lot of academic writing depends on these very long, drawn-out sentences. Usually the verb is delayed, there's tons of clauses. You guys probably know how to use the comma. But don't forget how you can do it to elongate sentences and avoid that choppy kind of sense of writing. So for example, in my book that I wrote, it was kind of a theological devotional book. I was trying to set a scene for myself. And if you look at this paragraph, every sentence begins the same. I went out to recess. Everyone wanted to play with me, blah, blah, blah. This day, I told myself. If you look at it in the eye, it's just very choppy. Now, what a comma can do is create that variation. That afternoon at recess, comma, everyone wanted to play with me. Everyone wanted my attention. That feeling of belonging, comma, of having a seat at the table. You know, look at how you're using commas to increase some variation. You've got introductory clauses. You've got some cool things you can do to create that written voice. Now, when you use all of the advanced grammar, what you're doing is creating that written voice. So if you look at this paragraph, you have everything. You've got the colon, the semicolon, the dashes, and the parentheses. And so if I read this to you, you'd begin to feel a real voice. So as I read it, you can see it on the screen, and then you can get a sense of a voice. So it goes like this. That afternoon at recess, everyone wanted to play with me. Everyone wanted my attention. That feeling of belonging, of having a seat at the table, became a drug as powerful as anything in the world. From that day in first grade with Miss Mayo until just a few years ago, I did everything I could to win that spotlight through achievement. I wrote and spoke and earned the best grades. I traveled for oratory and debate. I thought to myself that as long as I kept achieving, I would find and keep what I've always dreamed of. You know, colon there, a seat at the table. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Not only did I need to earn my seat at bigger and better tables, but I also had to keep my seat by continuing to prove I belonged. So that sentence, that kind of writing, those paragraphs is what attracted my writing to my first publisher. And it's this idea of just having that strong written voice. So these are the choices you have available to you, and I hope you'll begin to immediately improve your writing by just toggling some of those advanced punctuation marks. Thank you so much.